Have that dump button ready, because I honestly have no idea what's going to come out of my mouth.
Get ready for takeoff.
There is no way that I'm tapping out now.
You're listening to Unkillable.
If you didn't kill us last night, we are unkillable.
Hosted by Brandon Tierney.
What's going on, everybody? Episode number 28 of Unkillable. So, I got to tell you, the best part about this Jet off season is that it has been quiet. It has been buttoned up. It has been professional. It has been stable. What a welcome change. There's a couple things that really jump out to me. Now, and there's a few things I want to hit here that I think speaks to a culture shift. If you think about the process, let's go back to before the Jets even decided on Muji and Aaron Glenn. Remember in previous pods and obviously other places you followed the Jets, most of the conversation was, wow, they're talking to everybody. What in the world did the Jets do? And I mean, they're talking to people who really, no disrespect, had no business being interviewed for GM or head coaching spots. But I didn't have an issue with it because I thought it was all encompassing and I thought they were doing their due diligence. And it was done in a fairly stealth manner. Like we would learn, oh, wow, the Jets just met with so-and-so. They would put a tweet out and then that would be it. No real conjecture, nobody weighing in, no leaks, no nonsense, no bullshit, which has been the exact opposite of what the Jets have been for far too many years. So you go back to the search for their leaders, the new voices, okay? Muji and Glenn, clean, okay. What was the next thing they had to do? Well, they had to swiftly decide. Well, let me take that back. They had to decide. It didn't necessarily have to be swiftly. We preferred that it would be, but they had to make a decision on Aaron Rodgers. And if you go back to that, whether it's the right one, the wrong one, now I was both sides. I think Aaron could play. I think he's going to wind up with the Steelers. I think he's going to put up big numbers. I thought that from the middle of the season a year ago, he played much better than the first half when he learned how to trust his body. I think he was just a different player, and I think the stats bore that out. But independent of that, there was no sloppiness. It wasn't being played out publicly. It was, all right, boom, here's the Jets' decision. They have moved on from Aaron Rodgers. Okay. Another sign, and a very important sign, that hopefully things would be changing in how they operate day to day. All right, they just became way too sloppy. Like, it's one thing not to draft well, not to develop, to recycle coaches, to go through GMs very quickly. Like, that's unfortunate, and that's obviously, commensurate with a franchise that hasn't done anything in terms of winning for a long time, longest playoff drought in North American team history, or current, not history, but current team sports. That's all the stuff we know, and that's all the stuff that you can't change until you get on the field. You got to draft well. You got to do your due diligence with the free agency, blah, blah, blah. And they've done that, right? And we'll do a big draft show or two. Don't worry about that. But to change the culture, what you put out there for public discourse has to change. And, I'm not, and it has so far. And I'm not going to lie to you. I think most of you would probably agree. Now, I don't mean now because it didn't work out, but go back in real time when all of the prominent national shows, obviously we were doing this on WFAN every day, but my guy Stephen A on First Take, Fox was doing this very regularly. All the shows, all the national shows were chiming in with the Aaron Rodgers. It was basically a lead going back to when they pursued Rodgers a couple of years ago in Northern California to when they finally decided to want to make a trade, to having the trade go down. Like, it was just very public, and it was very, I guess satisfying is not the right word, but I'm not gonna lie to you. It felt nice to get some public love. I mean, generally, all the Jets get is the being the butt of the jokes here, right? It felt good to be on a national stage. Jets got Rodgers. Jets did this. Jets traded for Devontae Adams. Jets, before that, Jets have 7 primetime games lined up. It felt good to have a prominent, to carve out a prominent piece in the discussion pool before a game was played. Then, of course, the game started. Rodgers got hurt. Jets were awful. Next year he comes back. We know what happened. Head coach fired. General manager fired. lots of issues with the owner who was piping in on a bunch of different things. And I just reset all that, not just to regurgitate the history, but to compare it from then to now. Now you got to look far and wide to even get a little nugget, a little snippet, a little crumb of Jet news. And it's the complete antithesis. And it's a very welcome change. Okay, so they decide to make the moves that they did. They bring in Muji, they bring in Glenn, they get rid of Aaron Rodgers. That was quick. Okay, fine. Even the Justin Fields decision, there was no back and forth banter, no, public there, maybe that, this guy here, maybe Trey. Like, it was quiet. And then it was quick and it was done. And it was Justin Fields, 2-year deal, enough money to know that they were going to commit to him, certainly for this year, but not enough money where they were, committing long term, which would obviously be the wrong play because we don't really know fully yet who he is. I also think the fact that they're going for somebody in his mid-20s, unlike, say, a Kirk Cousins or even rolling it back with Rodgers, a veteran, or foolishly paying Sam Darnold, who's younger, but I don't think worth the money that he got. Even that represented a fairly radical shift in organizational philosophy. And when I say organizational philosophy, that's really code for Woody sticking his beak and just taking his beak and getting it out of the bird seed and just disappearing for a little bit. So he's trying to change. And listen, one of the things that I said, when you are that powerful and that affluent, okay, not many people tell you no, because who's going to really, come on, in the Johnson Corporation or the Jets organization, who's going to really have the stones to stand? And that's one of the problems with the Jets thus far. But nobody's going to have either the equity or just, again, the stones to stand up and say, nah, listen, Woody, I disagree. That's the wrong move. Can't do it. Not feeling it. You just had too many yes people, too many yes men that were in the building, quite frankly, too long, with too much juice in terms of at least getting the owner's ear, maybe too often telling him what he wanted to hear and not contrary to that, maybe what he needed to hear. But that leads me to another development, and it's a small one, depending upon how you view it. I don't think it's that small. Now, the other, I guess this was 2 days ago, the news broke, maybe even yesterday, whatever it was. The news broke that the Jets were offering, I think it's 175 out of 250 employees, an optional buyout. Now, the key word is optional. You can interpret that how you want. Like, if you're an employee and you get offered an optional buyout, yes, it could be met with gratitude and it could be generous. And I do think in the case of the Jets employees who were offered this based on stature and standing and tenure, I do think it was generous. I do. I looked at the numbers, 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years and beyond. I really do think that Woody is trying to do the right thing, at least in not adversely impacting financially too many people's lives where they've got to abruptly change a lifestyle, which is not fun for anybody, okay? But I think even more than that, that is why I like it. I do like it. The thought that, and now putting it into action, that the Jets are trying to, let's call it for what it is. If you're presenting almost 200 people out of a 250 employee base, an optional buyout, you are giving them a parachute to leave softly. But what you're really doing is providing incentive for them to leave, which is his way of, again, generously, nicely, whatever, respectfully. And I'm not trying to minimize that because there's human lives at stake here. And I think that that's important. And I do think he's doing the right thing. But he's basically trying to just get rid of a lot of people who have been in that building for far too long, who have done nothing productive that has led to, sustained success, any sort of tangible success, anything positive. The Jets building, we could all regurgitate the wins and the losses, right? And the firings and the hirings and the failed draft picks. We know that stuff chapter and verse. What I think's been most disconcerting to me about the Jets building is that it's too sloppy. There's a lot of loose lips in there. And I don't know who it is. I wouldn't even be so cavalier to try to identify people, because if I identify the wrong person, I'm not in the business of doing that. That's a character thing. that's an integrity thing. And I'm not here to just throw darts at a board and say, oh, yeah, it could be this person, when maybe they were one of the only assets in the building. But the fact that that Woody knows that it is time to hit the reset button, out with the old, in with the new, tells me that Woody is taking this transformation seriously. And again, I go back to what I said before. When you're that powerful and that affluent, people generally, they lick your boots and they don't tell you what you don't want to hear, because they're fearful of whatever might be the retaliation if it's not received properly from somebody like Woody or any other high-ranking, highly influential, highly powerful boss. That's just the workforce, man. You're going to have a conversation with a coworker, a peer, and it's going to sound different than when you're talking to somebody who is above you. That is the normal dynamics of every single workplace. That's the real world, right? So I think that's why I'm very encouraged by the start to this offseason. I think that Woody Johnson, for the first time, was so publicly embarrassed by, and they have been a circus many times. This is not the first time we have seen, the lion tamer and the sword swallower and the bearded woman and the tightrope, whatever else they do at a circus. That is not the first time that this has presented itself. It's quite often. So we are very familiar with the Jet Circus. And I think it's, when you're Woody, you're able to ignore it for a while. I'm Woody Johnson. I own the Jets. I'm worth $5, $6, $8 billion, whatever the hell the number is, and never really feel the need to change, because nobody's pushing you. Nobody's going to push you around. You call the shots, and that's it. There's a finality into every decision that you make. You got the juice. Everybody knows it. What could and what generally does incentivize people to change, people in a power position, two things. Number one, when they really start to hemorrhage money. That's their language. If I start losing, I mean losing money, not breaking even, not having a year where it's a little down. I mean hemorrhaging money to the point where it is unavoidable. We've got to restructure and recalibrate. That's always going to be the impetus behind somebody trying to change their way. That's number one. Now, to be clear, because the NFL just prints money. Now, yeah, you can tell me that there's some empty seats at MetLife. They're all sold. So whether or not somebody bought season tickets and, I don't know, $219 with handling fees when they bought them, it doesn't matter to the Jets' bottom line if they're sold on the secondary market on a rainy Sunday in November for $13. No, it doesn't matter. Woody got his money. The Jets got their money. And the way the money is dispersed with merchandising and just the shared revenue around the NFL, Woody ain't losing money. Woody is he's rolling in the money. So it's not that. So what would force Woody to change? Embarrassment. That's where we're at. Woody was so embarrassed that I really think for the first time, because he was away with President Trump during his first term. He was over in the UK. His brother Chris was here. He could escape the noise. Yeah, they weren't winning, but he wasn't in the trenches day to day, feeling the heat, hearing the monologues on the radio and being blistered on social media. He could separate himself from that, and he probably did, right? But now it's unavoidable. Last year was such an egregious malfunction on the highest level, and even pertaining to the Jets' malfunctions and dysfunction. It wasn't quite go tight, but it was right there, parallel to it for a lot of different reasons. So I think Woody looked in the mirror, and I think Woody is really, really trying to change. And as I get to this point, and again, think about what I laid out, guys, how swiftly and how stealthily and how buttoned up the search was. No leaks, due diligence, 30 candidates. We're digging in and we're doing homework. And we're not leaning on Charlie Casserly to tell us who we should hire. We're not leaning on Peyton Manning to tell us about Adam Gase. We're doing it ourselves, okay? We're gonna, and I know obviously Tannenbaum back there, Spielman, of course, who's now with the Jets full time. So it was a good, smooth hiring cycle. Check. Then the Rodgers decision, quick. All right, we're gonna move on. Clean, abrupt, not sloppy. And even when Aaron Glenn was asked about this, whether it's at the combine, whatever, the owners meeting when this stuff comes up, he's doing a good job of moving forward. Like, I think I actually commend them. That's a tough spot to be in because you want to be respectful of an all-time quarterback legacy, four-time MVP, Super Bowl champion. He's an all-time great. He's got the numbers and the hardware to prove it, right? And the accolades. But if you go down that road too much with the platitudes, now the stories just keep getting written, and it just pumps life and oxygen into the Rodgers stuff. He did the opposite. He said it's about moving forward. It's not about one guy. It's about the team. All right. I think you've seen a change in social media behavior from the Jets. Was it Quinnen Williams? Somebody, it wasn't incredibly combative or divisive, but it was just enough. What the hell was it about? And I forget what it was. And it was Q. It was Quinnen. I think it may have been about Rodgers, Quinnen Williams. And he very quickly circled back, deleted it, and clarified, like, without saying, I'm going to stay in my lane. That's basically what was put out there from Q. And the reason that happened is because Aaron Glenn said, enough of the nonsense. You know, guys, whether it's Sauce or Garrett Wilson, the discontent and all the noise that surrounded the Jets, that has dissipated. That's another check. Then there was all sorts of quarterback speculation. You know, do you make a move for Jameis Winston? Ironically, the Giants have him now, and draft somebody 7th overall. Could it be Russell Wilson? Could it be Kirk Cousins? Could it be Daniel Jones? Could it be Justin Fields? Well, we know it wound up being Justin Fields. Quick contract, commensurate with where he is as a player and the emphasis and the leash that they're going to give him to be their guy. Check. Well done. Right? Anything with free agency. No crazy splashes. Depth. Directly addressing positions of weakness. The third level. Some other stuff, right? Quick decision on Devontae Adams. Hey, and I think Devontae Adams could still play. I think he's got 90% of his power still. I think he's still a stud. But, you know, where the Jets are, and they've got to pay Garrett Wilson and others as well, Sauce, and lesser extent Breece Hall, Vera Tucker, whatever. They've got some decisions to make financially. So rather than let that story linger, you know, a click here, and no shade, they're just doing their job. I like all these men, Rich Cimini, you know, Connor Hughes, rather than have that languish, and I think they do. I think Connor's great. Rather than let that languish for a month, nah, nonsense. You know, we're going to move on. We're done. That's it. Over. Respectfully. Done. Clean break. Check. So the fact that this has all happened this way tells me Woody has done soul searching. Okay. And I believe this is the first time that he's truly trying to change, because there's evidence, and I just did it twice, and I'm leaving out some other little things, but even the employee buyout options, that is evidence that he knows that his way does not work, and it's going to take a complete 180, a complete recalibration of philosophy and voices and different people in the building. He knows that. That's step one. The first step to solve a problem is to admit that there is one. And Lord knows, pertaining to sports, nobody's got a big, or had, or maybe still has, whatever, a bigger problem than this football team. He's addressing it. He's out of his comfort zone. He's doing things differently. Easiest thing to do would be, I'm still going to make my money. My net worth is still what it is. I'm good. I'm fine. Better than all of us financially. But he does want to win. And he does, I believe this, because anybody with pride, I don't care how much money you have, money cannot shield you from constant public humiliation. And that's why I think he's changing. Now, here's the test, all right? And I don't know this. I can't give you the answer in a podcast. I can theorize. I can offer speculation and everything that I've done here, and I'll continue to do. I don't really know if it's going to stick until there's that first pivot point, that real point of inflection, where whether it's on draft night in the war room, let's say Muji and Glenn want to do one thing, and whether it's, I don't know, moving back for a quarterback, moving up for a quarterback, whatever it might be, whether it's not re-signing Sauce, who I think they will, not re-signing Garrett, I think they will at that point he be able to continue this evolution of empowering people, or at least what I perceive to be this evolution of him empowering people and attacking his ownership responsibilities differently? Or Will those old, ugly characteristics rear its ugly head again? And he's got to get his fingerprints all over it. And I got news for you, Woody. I think you're a good guy. I know you're incredibly successful from a business perspective. As a New York sports owner, you're as bad as it gets. The absolute worst. You've been terrible. That is not even open to debate. The record is what it is. It's not a personal attack. Hal Steinbrenner, you think about the knocks. And I take these calls all the time, not so much, to start the season, but during the offseason with Soto. You almost went all in, but you didn't go all in, whatever. Steinbrenner still gets hit quite harshly in the court of public opinion. The guy was just in the World Series. They win 95 games every year with their eyes shut. The stadium's always full. It's a class operation. There's never any scandal with the Yankees. I don't think Cashman's perfect, but he's buttoned up. I think Boone's a good manager, buttoned up. But yet, he gets hit hard. Steinbrenner. Compare Steinbrenner to Woody. And that's almost too easy because it's ridiculous. How about Cohen, who's just starting? Steve Cohen tried a couple of things early. He had the bold declaration, which I guess you could still theoretically get to, the 5-year window to win a championship. Now, he kind of walked that back a little bit, and I didn't have an issue when he said it. He was trying to galvanize Met fans that were beaten down after the Wilpon days. Matter of fact, I thought it was a smart play. That was a good move. And now, Cohen, he did what he had to do to get Soto away from the big bad Yankees. Did it. They made the playoffs a year ago. They almost made the World Series. He's paying Lindor. He brought back, but I know he's hurt. Brought back Manaea, gave him money. All right. Not everybody wanted Pete back. A lot of you did if you're a Mets fan, and many Met Jet fans are the same, right? I know a lot of you wanted Pete back. I know from a baseball perspective, more so probably from Stearns, there was a real conversation. Should we really bring him back? He's 30. He's not a good fielder. He's slow. His average going backwards. He's a righty. All the trends contractually in baseball for first baseman are going the opposite way. And you know what? He heard a few boos at I think it was called the Mason Day, like the Mets Fan Fest a month and a half or so ago. He reacted to that. I'm not saying that's fully why, but he even brought back Pete. Okay. And I think the Mets are maybe a little overrated. I don't think they've got as many horses maybe as some people think, but I didn't think they had that a year ago. Bottom line, Cohen's a great owner. Dolan was so easy to crush, and he brought it upon himself. All right. Because the Knicks were a disaster, going back to the 1 year, and I was doing Knicks pre and post game radio stuff at this point. I was around that team every year. Larry Brown's first year, Marbury and Stevie Francis and Eddie Curry and that circus. Talk about a circus. But he even changed his style and, hands off. And he's proven. Now, I don't think the Knicks can win the championship. I don't think they have it. I don't think they've got the toughness to win a championship this year. But they're still a really good team. They were really good a year ago. They're going to win 50-something games this year. They have 2 starters in the All-Star game. And we're proud of the Knicks again. So Dolan is 1,000 times better than Woody. I could do this all day. The point is, Woody Johnson's the worst owner, okay? By a million gazillion miles. Ironically, the owner who's probably closest to him at this point, I'm going to put the hockey aside for a minute. I'm not the biggest hockey guy. I don't want to misspeak. But the name and the franchise that's always been one of the bastions for New York sports, the Giants, Mara's kind of right near him, if you really think about it. But Woody has no grounds to stand on. Nobody, and I mean nobody, will stand up and vouch for Woody Johnson not as a person, as an owner. No one. And I feel like it has finally gotten to the point for him. He has to meet that head on. And I feel like he is, as I've just chronicled. So I think that the Jets offseason has been awesome. I think it's been superb. I don't know who they're going to draft. I've got thoughts on that. We'll do a couple of draft shows. Draft is about 3.5 weeks away. Can't wait. Jets have the 7th pick. I am encouraged by the fact that, at least for now, their quarterback situation is a little settled, at least with Fields for a year, maybe 2. They don't, or they can, I should say. The Jets can operate with a free mind, whereas, just to contrast that to the Giants right now, Like if you're Dable and Chain, you're sitting there saying, "Jeez, I mean, all right, we got Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson, but I mean, how long is our leash here?" There were a lot of people calling me up saying that they should have been fired a year ago. And with all due respect, I would not have brought them back. I would have made a move myself. So they are doing things right now, and they are not operating, I don't think, freely. They are operating for self-preservation. They're not thinking about, stocking draft picks for 2 years from now, because if they do, they won't be around to cash them in. So I think that the Jets organization, they're getting younger, they're getting more buttoned up, they're getting more fiscally responsible. They are staying away, thankfully, to the stupid splashes that get you nowhere except a click and a segment on the radio that leads to no wins. They are doing things, I think, in a manner that is much more representative of a franchise that is moving in the right direction. So I feel good about all this, and I don't even want to drop a butt on you here, but I have to. The only but is, like Dolan, let's say the Knicks lose in round 2 this year, and which is what I think they'll do. I think there's a chance they could lose in round 1 with the wrong matchup, but they'll probably get to round 2 and lose to the Cavs. And if they they'll eventually lose to the Celtics. Like, if the Knicks had a rough start next year, and then Dolan did something that some perceive as rash and irrational and a little bit too early, quick trigger, well, then maybe we can make the case that maybe he's getting unsteady and reverting back to what bothered us about him for so long. That could happen to Woody. But I think right now, Woody's taking on a largely anonymous existence. And hey, listen, let that band play the music loud. We're in the corner, we're in the cut, and we're trying to figure our stuff out. And it has been so long since the Jets have had an offseason like this. Now it hasn't always been like the Rodgers stuff. I'm talking about the last 10 years, the last 14 years, right? Playoff drought. But this is the first time where they've had some talent, and they still have talent. What a surprise. The Jets have talent. Stop me when you heard that before, last couple of years. They do. Not as much as we thought, but they've got some real high-level, first-rate players, all right? And they haven't had talent and had a low profile, I can't remember. Because the last time they had talent before this, you want to tell me Todd Bowles' first year when they won 10 games, but that was a one-off. They lost up in Buffalo. You'd have to go back to Rex's run early, where the Jets had a lot of talent. And they went to back-to-back AFC championship games, but they weren't operating in the stealth, responsible manner. It was all bluster. And they backed it up with some wins, which was good, but it was a lot of noise and a lot of showboating and a lot of woofing. Aaron Glenn's not playing that. Now, he might woof when that door is shut, and he's gonna be on, guys. Old school. I love it. Same with Muji, old school. And this is why you clean house. And I can't prove this, but I wouldn't be surprised if you talk about the optional buyouts. Was that a Woody initiative? It might have been. It very well may have been. And again, it is generous. I want to reiterate that. But if you're Muji, or even Glenn coming from Detroit, but more Muji as an executive, he may come in here and said, we have how many people on the payroll? Why? For what? We had 119 with Denver, which is at that point about 80 more than actually 130 more than the Jets have, roughly. I think I did that math quick. I think I did it right, but you know what I mean. So maybe the impetus came from, and that little shove toward Woody came from Muji. Maybe it came from Woody. It doesn't matter. If you're going to take anything away from this pod, and I know that there are podcasts that are, much more, a lot more juice and more excitement in terms of like this Unkillable pod. Like when the Jets get smoked on a Sunday and I fire this thing up, it's whatever's in my sight's going to get absolutely bludgeoned to death. And while it stinks losing, it's cathartic. And I'm sure on some level, watching me be a lunatic is entertaining. And delivering that while it stinks losing, I don't want to say it's fun, but it is a little cathartic. And the stuff that goes into presenting interesting content, I enjoy that, right? I also enjoy talking about, when schedules come out, 7 primetime games. Oh, Aaron Rodgers, this, that. There's juice there. There's pizzazz. There's something there. But if it doesn't lead anywhere, what's the point? So I don't know about you, but you can only, and I can only get beaten down so many times. I'm not taking the bait anymore. None of these bold proclamations. Jet's going to do this. Jet's going to do that, because usually the Jets just jet. But I'm also not going to say that, because this is the first time in a long time that they really seem to be operating differently. I'm going to let it breathe. I'm going to give it room to live. Even if there's a little misstep and a little malfunction, I'm not going to pounce on them and say, you see, they couldn't sustain it. I'm going to let this go on for a little bit, because this is encouraging. And I think that you should be encouraged as well. All right. So, Ev, before I get out of here,
Yep.
Ev, he is not beaten down. He is resilient like all of us. Younger, so he hasn't gotten his face kicked in as much as we have.
There you go.
Ed, you've consumed this entire Jets offseason. You feeling what I'm saying? And if not, let me know. Are you with me or no on this?
No, I'm definitely with you, because I feel like so many times, especially with the Mets and the other side, but definitely just in general, it feels like every time you win the offseason, you almost set yourself up for failure a little bit, because you get so hyped going into it that anything's a disappointment. So I'm actually, I'm a fan of the way they're operating, just being super stealth, because I feel like as much as it might not be as fun to maybe track along with, because you don't know what the hell's going on at any point. I definitely do feel like it's the better way to go about it. And it's always about, like, it's fun to talk about stuff in the offseason when you're winning the offseason and you're getting on all these rankings that all these people make up. But I think at the end of the day, all you got to do is win the season. And I think that's what they're setting themselves up to do, because, Glenn really seems like the hard ass you kind of need. Like these reporters are asking him questions and he's like, hey, have you seen Tanner Eggstrand's resume from 20 years ago? He knows what he's doing with this spot. So
he's shutting them down fast. Aaron Glenn ain't playing, man. I love it.
Yeah, so I think everything they've done this offseason has been awesome. And I agree 100% on the Woody stuff, where it's like, I think he's finally getting the message where it's like, even though out in the public he was saying to, I think it was somebody on SNY, he was saying like, hey, that report didn't affect me and I think it was bogus. But I think internally, especially in-house and even in his own brain, he was like, yeah, I gotta start getting things back on track here, because I'm losing it.
I'm going to leave you with this. Good. So I like the way you lay that out. I'm going to leave you guys with one more thing here, right? So if you play golf, by the way, do you play golf at all or no? You a golfer?
No, I'm not good at it. If I do.
Neither am I. But I have tortured myself for a long time. I wouldn't call myself a golfer. I would call myself more somebody who has played a lot of golf, loves the game, passion exceeds my execution. I know the game. But man, it's hard. It beats me up. And there's good, and then there's hacks like me, and I'm able to differentiate quickly. But the analogy would be this, and I hope that this doesn't happen with Woody. And this is how I'm going to end it here, okay? I would say that if you're a golfer and you're working on whether it's a flop shot, okay, which, as you guys know, if you play, is probably, I'm not talking about cut shots. I can't do the stingers like with Tiger Woods. I can't do that. But like a flop shot, you're green side, and say you're at the range or your country club and you're practicing and no one's around, whatever. Even if it's practice, right? You open up that club face. That's very intimidating. The green's 10 yards in front of you, and the propensity to skull a ball is very high if you're a higher handicap like me. But when you're free and you lose, you're like, oh wow, okay, well, wow, look at that. Flat went right up just the way I've been practicing. And you get a little repetition, a little zone. And you do it, 6 out of 10 times. Like, okay, hey, I can't wait till this presents itself for the first time during my round. And then maybe you get to the third hole, right? And now you're not on the range, or you're not in your backyard, or you're not in your basement on a carpet with a wiffle ball practicing this. You're playing with your buddies, like a little Nassau going, or just pride, whatever, or you think you're going to shoot a good score that day. Now it's the third or fourth hole. You're 9 yards off the green. You got to go over a bunker. You're short-sided. Hey, I've been practicing this shot. Okay, I feel good. Let me whip out the old flop shot. And then you skull it out of bounds, dropping another ball, taking the penalty. You walk off, you get an 8 or 9. And that's happened to me. And I say to myself, what changed? What changed from when my body and my mind was loose and free and I was doing it and I felt good, and like, why did I suddenly go from that where it felt fairly natural to the first time I try to do it, whether it's in front of my buddies or people you don't know, or just a personal score, whatever, And you are so woefully short of being acceptable with that shot. I'll tell you why. Pressure, tension. You overthink it. You're not thinking about if you're smoking a cigar at 7 o'clock on a weeknight at your country club and the sun's going down, you got your music going, you don't have a care in the world. But if you're playing a little match and, you want to win the hole and it's a 2-hole carryover, even though it's not the Masters, you compartmentalize things differently. And I think if you play golf, I know you can relate to that kind of, and it could be any shot. It could be it could be something off the tee that you're trying. That's just something that I've worked with that never works when I want it to. Anyway, I say that because I just hope that doesn't happen to Woody. Right now, there's no pressure. Right now, Woody's got a cigar and he's at the range. Nice July night, a little breeze, so you're not dying out there from the humidity. Beautiful sunset, got the music. Well, week one, really the draft and all the other, that's when you're actually in the middle of your round. So it's easy for him to change now and incorporate new things now. Will he be able to do it the first time he starts feeling heat? And that's the ultimate barometer. Dolan has changed. I don't think it's impossible for people to change. I don't. I think you've got to hire people that are smart. You've got to empower them. You've got to let them do their job. You've got to trust their instincts, and you've got to let them do what you're paying them to do. And I don't think he's done that at all so far. It's my hope. I'm not going to say my belief. It's my hope that this is the first step of him learning how to do that. And if that's true, you know what? Then you're moving in the right direction. And then Sundays make Sundays fun again. I don't even need Monday nights or Thursday nights. Just give me some, hey, put me at 1 o'clock. Bury me in there. That's fine. Put me with it's a pain in the ass for me, for my job, when the Jets and the Giants play at 1 o'clock, because I've got to watch one live and I'm going to watch the Jets live. I've got to record the Giants, go back and take my notes so I can go on the air and do what I got to do the next day. I will happily do that, just working in an element of anonymity to start, which is what they're doing now. Everything they've done is fairly anonymous and buttoned up, rather than Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, the 2-hour pregame show on a quarterback that, you know what I'm saying. I like the tone of the offseason. So that'll wrap up episode number 28. We will get back. Let's see. We got 3.5 weeks before the draft. I will certainly do one next week. No question. If something else big breaks, I'll jump in. I'll get that for you. We will start now loading up the draft. I'll get you a good guest. I'll let you know, who I'm looking at, what I'm thinking, and all the trade possibilities. There's a lot of options for the Jets, so it's going to be a lot of fun. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Share it, Spotify, Apple, wherever you guys find your pods. There's 27 old ones, so if you're new to this, go check it out. And I will talk to you guys next week and really start ramping up, I should say, the draft stuff. All right, guys, I'll catch you soon. Catch you tomorrow, by the way, 10 o'clock on the Fan. I'll see you.